We continue now at the top of Daf Talmud Beis in Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 99b. On the previous Amud, the Mishnah was discussing a case where a person has a bore, and the bore is located in somebody else's property, so he has to access the bore through that person's property. And the Mishnah said that both of them, both of the owner of the house and the owner of the bore, can have a lock to access the bore. And the Gemara said, we understand why the owner of the bore has a lock. He doesn't want people to steal his water. But why is it that the owner of the house should have a lock in order to prevent access to the bore? And the Gemara answers, Mishum cheshad ishto. The reason is because of a suspicion with his wife, meaning to say he doesn't want the owner of the bore to be alone together with his wife. And the Rashbam explains Mishum cheshad ishto because of the suspicion with his wife. Aval hashta deino yachol lisho below balabayis. But now that he can't take the water, he can't draw the water without the balabayis because the balabayis has a lock. Lo yikanes lisham at sheyava balabayis. He won't enter there until the balabayis comes, and that removes that suspicion. And the Rashbam continues Aval mishum geneva. But because of theft, maybe the balabayis is concerned that the owner of the bore will steal things from him. Shelo yignov chafotzav shel balabayis, that he shouldn't steal the items of the balabayis. Lo chayshin, and that we were not concerned with. Sheha'isha mishameres es habayis, because the wife will be able to watch over the house. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Misha yesh lo gino lifnim miginoso shel chaver. A person has a garden and it's inside or within, beyond the garden of his friend. In order to get to his garden, he has to go through the garden of his friend. Nichnas b'shah shederech b'nei adam nichnasim. He enters at a time when people normally enter. V'yotze b'shah shederech b'nei adam yotzen. And he leaves at a time when people normally leave. Ve'eno machnes l'soch hatagarn. He should not bring merchants in there. V'lo yikanes mitocha l'soch sada acheres. And he shouldn't enter from there to some other field. That he should not do. V'hachitzon zoreas haderech. And the person in the outer garden is allowed to plant along the path. And the Mishnah continues, Nosnu lo derech min hatzad. Now, if he gave him a path along the side, midah shneim, and that was with both of their understandings, so then nichnas b'shah shehu rotza. Then already, since that entryway is along the side, he can enter whenever he wants. V'yotze b'shah shehu rotza. He can exit whenever he wants. Umachnes l'soch hatagar. And he could bring merchants in there. V'lo yikanes mitoch l'soch sada acheres. But he still should not enter from there to another field. V'zeh einon rashoim lezora. And both of them are not allowed to plant on the path in such a situation. And the Rashbam explains Tagorin merchants liknos miyarakos ginas, so he shouldn't bring the merchants in because they want to buy vegetables from his garden. He shouldn't enter from there to another field. The Rashbam says, Kolomar, what that means to say is as follows. He shouldn't enter lechatchila into his garden when he doesn't really need anything from this garden. In other words, he's not going inside his garden because he needs something from his garden. He just wants to use it as a shortcut to another field, to have a shorter path. And if he's using it in that fashion, that's already similar to bringing in merchants. Because the person in the outer garden, he's only giving him a path. He's giving him those rights. He's only giving it to him for the purpose of the garden to collect his fruits. But if it has something that has nothing to do with the garden, so he's not giving him rights for that purpose. And then the Mishnah said, when the path is right through the middle, the person in the outer garden can plant over there. Since that path is in the middle of his field, we're clear, we are witnesses that certainly he didn't give him this path for everything. That he's not allowed to plant there. In other words, he's giving him the path, but he's not saying that you have full rights to this area that I can't plant there. But if it's min hatzad, but let's say it's from the side, that's not such a loss. Since this was with both of their understandings, Anon Sahadi, again, we are witnesses. The Mistama Machalo Eskala Derech Legamri. Mistama, he gave him the full rights to the path. Lios Miyuchad Lahalicha Velo Lezria, that it's for his, that he can walk there and he's not going to plant there. Vezeh Ein Rashaim Lazara, and they're both not allowed to plant, like we said. They came in the Minatzadhi, since it's on the side. Legamri Yechdua Lehilach Grade. It's made specifically for walking and only for walking and for no other purpose. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says, Amo beis hashalchen ani mocher lach. If a person says, I'm selling to you an irrigation stream for the field that is irrigated, nosen lo beis amos lesocha v'yama mikan lagfeh. He gives him 2 amos for the actual water channel, and then you give an am on each side. That's for the sides, for the banks of the water channel. And the Rashbam explains, Amas hamayim, again, he's giving him this stream to irrigate the field, gedola, that's large, kedei lahashkos beis hashalchin ani mochelach. I'm selling this to you. You can use it to irrigate a field. Tzarech litan lo shtei amos barochav. So it has to be what is considered an amas hamayim. It has to be 2 amos wide. Shem kotzra, because if it's too small, yachbor bekarka v'yarchivena. At shtei amos means, let's say it's too small, he can dig and make it wider. So it's 2 amos kadesh yavo lakan mayim harbe. The point is, he wants to be able to have a lot of water flow in this direction. Shezeh shir lahashkos beis hashalchin, because this is the amount that's needed in order to irrigate a field that needs irrigation. V'gam nosin lo ama min hasadim mikan v'ama mikan. He also has to give him along the sides of the channel. He has to give an am on each side, mishnei gedosav, along the 2 sides of the stream. Kedei lasaken meosa karka agfeha shal amas hamayim im yipol. That way he can fix it. If it falls, he'll be able to fix it. Lishna achrina ama beis hashalchin ani mocherlach. Another understanding is that when he says ama beis hashalchin, I'm selling you nosin lo shtei amos lesocha shal soda lasaken agfeha ama mikan v'ama mikan. He has to give him 2 amos in the field in order to fix. In other words, an am on each side, those are the 2 amos. He gives him the am on each side in order to be able to fix it. That's another way of understanding. B'shem Rabbeinu Yaakov bar Yakor v'ikr. He says that's in the name of Rabbeinu Yaakov bar Yakor, and that is a better explanation. And Shmuel continues, Amma beis hakilon ani mocherlach. Let's say he says, I'm selling you an Amma beis hakilon, which some translate as a shaduf channel. It's a particular kind of irrigation channel that's a little smaller. Nosin lo Amma achas lesocha. So there he gets 1 Amma for the actual channel. V'chatzi Amma mikan v'chatzi Amma mikan lagfeha. And he gets a half am on each side for the banks of the channel. And the Rashbam explains Amma beis hasilon v'ikod amri kilon. Some have the word silon, some have the word kilon. Ulahashkos behemos urechitzas begadim v'kelim. This is for the purpose of giving animals to drink and for washing clothing and vessels. Vein gadol kol kach. It's not so big like a regular water channel. V'nosin lo amma achas lasochel harchivan ad amma. So you only get 1 amma within the channel. And again, lishna achrin, another version, same as before. Nosin lo amma achas lisvaso lisocha shel karka mocher. He gives 1 amma along the sides within the karka of the seller. Kagon chatzi amma mikan v'chatzi amma mikan. Again, half an amma on each side. V'ikr, we're just talking about what he's giving him along the sides. But in any case, those are the dimensions of the various kinds of irrigation channels. And the Gemara continues, V'yosan agfayim mizorim, and the banks of these water channels, who plants there? Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says, Bal hasada zorim, the owner of the field can plant there, and that's referring to planting things like wheat and crops. Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. Rav Nachman says that Shmuel says, Bal hasada notam, the Bal hasada is allowed to plant there, and that's referring to trees. And the Gemara explains, Man Amar zorim, the one who says you can plant crops, Kol shekei notam, certainly you're allowed to plant trees. Uman Amar notam, but the one who says you can plant trees, Avol zorim lo, but you're not allowed to plant other kinds of crops, because chilchule mechalchule, what's going to happen is it's going to perforate the ground, and that can damage the amas hamayim, that can damage the water channel. And the Gemara continues, V'yamar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, and Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says, Amas hamayim shakalu agfeha, if you have a water channel and the banks of the water channel have collapsed, Mesakna me'osa sada, he's allowed to fix the banks of the water channel from earth, from the field, even though the field is owned by someone else. B'yadua, because it's known, shalo kalu agfeha ela ba'osa sada, because that the banks have collapsed into the field itself. So that earth went back to the field, so you're allowed to use earth from the field in order to fix the banks of the water channel. And the Gemara continues, Maskefla Rapapa asks on this, why doesn't the owner of the field say to the owner of the channel that your water ran, the reason why it collapsed was because all of the earth has gone downstream. It's essentially taken away my earth. So you can't use my earth to rebuild the water channel, the banks of the water channel. And the Gemara says, Rapapa says, Shalmanaskein kibel ola balasada. That's just one of the conditions that the owner of the field has with the owner of the water channel, that if the banks should collapse, the earth from the field can be used to rebuild that water channel. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, if somebody has a public path going through his field, let's say he takes away that path from them, and he gives them a path along the side instead, what he gave to the public he's given away, but he doesn't get back his path. They're essentially going to have both paths. They'll have the path that they had all along, and the one that he gave them from the side. And the Mishnah continues, let's say a person sells the rights to a path through his field to an individual. So Dalet Amos, that's 4 amos wide. He's essentially giving the person a path 4 amos wide within his property. Derech Harabim, let's say a person gives a path to the public, Sheishes Reyama, that's going to be 16 amos wide. Derech HaMelech, let's say it's a path for the king, Ein Lashir, there is no maximum measurement. Derech HaKever, let's say it's a path for a burial, meaning that is for the procession for a burial. Ein Lashir, also there's no maximum measurement. And finally, the Mishnah says, Hamaimid, this was a practice where people would stand and comfort the mourners after the funeral. What is that area? Dayanitzi Porei Amru, the judges of Tzipori, they say, Beis Arba Kabin. That's the area, the amount of land that a person plants 4 kav of seeds. That's the area that's used for a maimed. And the Gemara says, Amai Shalolo Higio, why doesn't the owner of the field get his path back? Meaning, if there was a path that the public used through his field, and instead he gave them a path along the side, why can't he get his path back? Linkot Pazra Velesav, let him sit there with a stick and prevent people from using that original path. Shamat Mino, should we learn from this, Lo Avid Inish, Dino Lenavshe, that a person cannot take the law into his own hands, Afilu B'makom Pseida, even in a situation of loss. This is a situation of loss for him. He should be able to take the law into his own hands and make people use the alternate path. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Zvid Mishmei de Rava. Rav Zvid says in the name of Rava, Gezeira Shamiyitein Lohen Derech HaKalosin. You can't necessarily learn that a person is not allowed to take the law into his own hands. It's just that in this particular case, he's not allowed to prevent them from using the path because there's a Gezeira. There's a decree that maybe he'll end up giving them a path that is a longer path that's out of the way for them, and that would not be allowed. And the Gemara continues with another answer of Mesharshia Mishmei de Rava. Amar of Mesharshia in the name of Rava says, Benosein Lohem Derech HaKalosin. Actually, the Mishnah is talking where he did give them a path that was more circuitous, meaning to say he gave them a path that was not as convenient, and that's why the Mishnah says that the original path that they have, they continue to have access to that original path, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Amud Aleph.